What's up guys? I'm Lucas and welcome to Terracotta Aquarium. So it's an exciting day because I'm starting this new aquarium build. This is going to be an Epiphytes only aquarium with a kind of dual island setup and just a simple sand foreground. It's going to be home to a group of Corydoras and maybe some type of schooling fish. But in this video, I'm going to focus on setting up all of the equipment and then the hardscape and then the substrate. So I'll show you how I got to this point. I'm going to show you everything in a simple step-by-step fashion so that you can easily replicate something like this yourself if you want to. All right, let's get started. So for the first thing, I'm going to set up some lights. I've got these two Lomini Asta 20s that I'm going to use. We can get these set up and we can take a closer look at the aquarium. So I've never used these before, but they should have a full LED spectrum, and looks like they have a little controller on them, but I'm probably going to get these on my own personal timer. They do come with a little remote as well, and a nice easy way to set them up on the aquarium. So yeah, let's get them situated. Nice. So these are pretty straightforward to set up. You kind of just screw these two pieces together. It's got this nice little space for the cord to go out the back. Yeah, pretty straightforward. We'll see how they look on the aquarium. But just to give a little bit more information about these guys, these are a 16-watt light. So like one of these would be great for a nano aquarium, like a probably a 10-gallon, 5 to 10 gallons, something like that. So I'm figuring that two of them is going to be just about perfect for that tank. But let's get them attached and see how they do. All right, there we go. So obviously these aren't straight or organized properly at this point. I just kind of wanted to get the lights on here. And now that they're here, I'll start doing a little bit of adjusting. So as you can see, the aquarium is pretty dirty, but I'll get to that. I'm gonna stay focused on the lights for now. I think I'm gonna mess around with the settings. So increasing, looks like it's at maximum. There are a few different modes. More of a blue, green, red, and like daylight and kind of low light. And I'm just gonna stick with the full daylight. So I'm just gonna make sure they're on the same setting. All right, maximum, blue, yellow. Don't recommend staring into the light. I can't see anything now, but it seems like these are gonna do the job nicely. So I like to just use a tape measure basically to make them equally spaced from the edges. I think I'm gonna go about 9 inches from each edge. 9 inches from this side, right about there. So that's looking pretty good. And now we can get a much better look at the aquarium itself. This is a 20-gallon, well, roughly 21.3 gallon aquarium from UNS. So it's a 90-liter long. And I think it's a really, really cool shape. I think the increased surface area on the bottom is going to lend itself really well to a group of Corydoras or some sort of catfish, maybe a pleco, something like that. And then maybe a smaller schooling fish in the top. So I think I'm going to build this especially with Corydoras in mind, because Corys are some of my favorite fish. I would love to have an aquarium that is just absolutely perfect for them. So I'm going to keep that thought in mind as I continue working on the hardscape. But before we get to that, let's set up more of the equipment. Oh, and just a thought, I didn't show this, but the other day I put this white background on the back, and that is just like some window film, super cheap. You can get it at a hardware store. I got mine on Amazon for just a few bucks, basically. I use it on most of my aquariums. It provides just a really good backdrop, basically. It makes the whole thing feel a little bit brighter as well. because obviously it reflects the light. So yeah, let's do the filter and the heater next. So actually, before we start working on the heater and the filter, I just wanted to show you how I have this stand set up. So this stand is rated for like 1,500 pounds approximately. So it should be more than adequate for this aquarium. It's probably going to be like 300, 400 pounds, something like that when it's all full. And you'll notice that I've got these wooden blocks on the base of the stand here. And that's because my whole studio is on a bit of a slant because it's in my garage. So this is the best solution I've found. I have to do this for basically all of my stands, but it's just a bunch of heavy duty wooden shims. So this is a really good solution if you find yourself working on a space like this, like I have. Doing this is a really easy, safe way to make sure that your aquarium stand is going to be totally safe and stable. All right, things are starting to get a little bit messy. This always happens to me, just boxes of things open all over the place. So the filter that I'm going to be using for this tank is a BioStyle 20 from Awaze. And I have this running in another tank right now. And for the most part, it's been doing a great job. But just over the last couple of days after I ordered this one, the motor has stopped running. I think twice in the last 2, maybe 3 weeks, something like that. So I'm a little bit concerned. It's been holding up fine. I just had to clean it out. So I would expect a little bit better from an Awaze product because I really trust them. We'll see how this one does. I think it's going to be fine. At least for the first 8 months, it'll be fine. But I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it to just make sure it continues running. But let's get into the box and see how it looks. So inside the box, we've got our intake. This looks to be exactly the same one that I have in my other tank. So everything you'd expect. Comes with some sponges with the attached filter media. And then yeah, inside here, these just fit in super easily. Just like that, there's just 2 little slots right there. And then this is the intake. And it fits, I don't know if you can see, right on top of the motor here. Super easy, has some little guidelines as well. There's also a little adjuster for the flow, which we'll use later. And then this part of the intake fits really easily, just right here. So I'll keep it like that for now. Oh, and then of course, the lid goes on top. So super easy, nice unit. It's also got these little feet here that you can kind of adjust for the width of the glass in your aquarium. So yeah, let's set this up. I actually just had a thought. I think before I set up the filter and the heater, I think I'm going to do a little cleaning on the glass, get all of this stuff out of the interior and just make it look really nice before I put anything on the glass itself. So when I'm cleaning out an aquarium, like the initial kind of prep, I like to use just water on the interior to pick up all the debris. And then I'll use like a glass cleaner on the outside. It's best to just not introduce any chemicals to the interior of the tank. You could probably wash them off, but I just like to play it safe and just use regular water on the inside. Okay, let's see how this filter is going to sit. I think I'm going to want to have it over here. Normally it'd be like a hang on the back and you'd maybe have it sitting here, but I think I want the flow to be going out across the front of the tank on this one. So I'm thinking, yeah, over here. And I think a lot of people, when they start an aquarium, they just start throwing stuff in the tank, and the lights probably come first because I want to see what they're doing. But then the filter and the heater are a little bit of an afterthought. And I find it really helpful to start with the equipment, because then you're going to be able to see where it's going to fit easily, and you can kind of hide it with the hardscape, or you can work around it more easily this way. And I do like with these hang on the back filters sometimes to add like a little strip of plastic here to direct the flow more across the surface. I'll see if I need to do that on this one or not. On my other one, I do have that set up, and it works fairly well. It just looks a little bit odd. So I do want to keep it as clean as possible, but we'll see as the build progresses. We'll make that decision. So the next piece of equipment that I want to check out is this heater. So this is a hollowed out heater from Hygger. And I chose this one because it's suited for 8 to 26 gallons, so perfect for the size that we're going to have. But I also like that it is a little bit smaller. Yeah, look at that. So it's nice and compact. And with the size of this aquarium, I didn't want something that was going to take up a massive amount of space. Here, I'll get one out and we can compare. This is where I keep a lot of extra, just random aquarium things. Terracotta. I have some extra heaters in here. So yeah, if we take a look at this one, and you just compare the size here, this one is just so much more compact. Let's look in the aquarium. Just look at the difference here. I don't know if you can see, it's a little awkward for me, but it's like half the size. And I think, yeah, it's just gonna look so much nicer in the long run. It'd be great to have a canister filter that concealed all of this, but we're doing this one a little bit cheaper, and I think this is gonna suit our needs perfectly. And it looks like this is gonna be pretty easy to set up. Just comes with a couple of suction cups. It looks like you can set the temperature pretty easily from this little controller. But we'll get to that when there's water in the tank. And I think I'm gonna go kind of right next to the heater here. It kind of makes sense to put your heater close to the filter because the water is being pushed around right here more than anywhere else in the aquarium. So if I put it right next to the intake, something like this, then the water going in will be pulled over the heater. So that'll make sure that there's a nice even temperature in the aquarium as the water is getting heated, pulled through the filter, pushed around the aquarium. Yeah, that will be absolutely perfect. All right, so we're looking pretty good so far. I think it actually looks pretty slick having all the equipment right over there. We'll have plenty of space for the hardscape, and the lights are doing a great job. So that's step one finished, equipment complete. I'm just gonna do a small tidy before we continue, and then I'll get some hardscape out on this table, and I'll talk a little bit about what my plan is as I do so. So full disclosure, I have been messing around with this hardscape a little bit last night and a little bit this morning, just to kind of get my brain going on what I want to happen here. So I've got these two awesome pieces of spiderwood, and then this one smaller piece. So it's going to be based around these pieces, and then these 5 black lava rocks. And I'm not sure if I'm going to use all of this stuff. I'm probably not going to use this big rock. I think it's just a little bit too big for the scale of the aquarium. But yeah, so this is what I'm going to be working with. And I was talking to you guys a little bit about potential catfish in here as well. And so I think for this aquarium, it's going to be a lot different than the other ones, because usually I will set up a multiple layers of substrate with gravel and aqua soil and sand and a place for plants to grow in the substrate itself. But Corydoras, catfish, they really like to dig in the substrate and really turn it over and get in there. So I think for the planting for this aquarium, it's going to be epiphytes only. So if you look at some of these pieces of spiderwood, they're just going to make such an awesome structure to put a bunch of Java ferns on, maybe some Vitus. So I think that's kind of what I'm going to go for. So it's going to be a totally clean sand with just a few lava rocks and then kind of a dual island with these 2 pieces of spiderwood. Well, 3. I've been using this kind of third piece as sort of a way to prop this one up a little bit. So I'm going to keep experimenting with that and we'll see how it looks. So I think what I'm going to do is get the hardscape in here, mess around a little bit until it's exactly how I like it. And then I'm going to glue it all together. And then after that, I'll add some sand. But let me show you a little example of kind of what I'm thinking for this. It'll be different, but similar. I want to show you one of my other aquariums. So this is my nature aquarium, or nature aquarium inspired aquarium. And as you can see, I've used spiderwood in the center as a really good framework for all of these epiphytes. And so I think I want to do that again because I really love how this looks. But I'm not going to use moss this time, and I'm not going to use stem plants behind. It's going to feel a lot more open, but have these 2 islands like this in it with this dense kind of planting. So I'm kind of using my own aquarium and how this worked for me before as inspiration. And that's something you can totally do as well. If you've got an idea that worked really well for you, then just iterate it. It doesn't need to be derivative, or you don't need to think of it like that. If you have something that works, just keep working on it and perfecting it. I'll see if I can replicate what I had put together last night. Because these pieces, they have these pretty like cut off ends. So I'm trying to hide those towards the back as much as I possibly can. You can see this piece also has this big cut off end right here. So I'm trying to hide that. So I'm really liking how this looks at the moment. It's super kind of imposing, and it's going to be so cool to have all the plants here and really well illuminated by this light. Hopefully the light isn't going to be too strong for some of the Java ferns and more lower light plants, but I'm going to work with this for now. But one thing I do want to think about as I'm setting this up is the ease in cleaning the glass. You kind of want to make sure that there is a decent space to work with to get an algae scraper in here to make sure you can clean easily. But I really like to have wood coming out of the top of the aquarium like this. It makes it feel much more three-dimensional and like the whole thing is a little bit bigger. And in this case, it's also going to allow some opportunity for growth coming out of the aquarium because Java ferns can grow immersed, and that's going to be one of the main plants here. So it'd be interesting to have a bit of an experiment like that to see if they do kind of come up towards the light and get a little bit above the aquarium. So another thing that I think about when I'm putting in wood like this is how close it is to the filter and how much flow is going to be pushed along the wood and how fast. Because you can have problems with blackbeard algae if you have fast flowing water going across wood. That's happened to me in a couple aquariums, and it's actually happening in another one right now, but I just trimmed it back. I'll probably make a video about that on the channel at some point in the future, because I think it is just a good thing to know about. But let's mess around with this. All right, I had to take out the other piece for a minute there, but I'm liking how this is sitting. It's really interlocking nicely. It's got this part coming above, which I think looks great. I've got plenty of space in the front. My only concern is that this light is going to be kind of directly above, but I think that could be okay. I am going to have some floating plants in here, so they will diffuse some of the light. Just kind of thinking out loud as I work. But I want to have these two pieces kind of slightly interlocking so that there's a little bit of a bridge between the two. So this one sits really nicely in the tank like this, but the problem is the plants aren't going to show very well with this big piece of wood coming out. So I really want it to be a little bit more leaned back. I might have to break off this little piece for it to be able to do that. I am really liking how this one is sitting though. Yeah, I think that this piece is a winner just like this. So I'm going to try to not mess with that placement too much. I think one good thing you can kind of take away from watching me do this is that you really shouldn't rush. It's really meditative to do this, to work with natural materials and try to find an arrangement that is pleasing for you. So don't rush this process, and it doesn't need to be perfect. You know, I'm taking my time with this because I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun to try to make this kind of thing work in the way that's most pleasing for you. But whenever you're happy, stop. You know, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to follow any classic aquascaping rules or anything like that. Just go with it until you are happy. That's the most important thing. So I feel like I'm getting close to something I'm happy with, but there's this little piece right here, this little cut off edge that is bothering me, and it keeps being on the presentation side, and it just looks a little bit too unnatural. So let me show you a trick on how you can fix this. So I've just got this pair of pliers. We can find the ends that we don't like and then just kind of rough it up. So yeah, that looks much better. And I think I'm actually just going to break off this little root as well. Just snap it off. It's just making it a little bit harder to work with, but I can save this and use it for something in the future. I think that this is really interesting. It has the kind of dual island look to it. I think that this one certainly needs to be balanced. So I think I'm going to get a stone in here, kind of right here, and see how that looks. If that doesn't work, I don't think I'll quite be able to keep it in that arrangement. But I really like that it has the two islands and then this kind of mass in the center, which will make really interesting swimming areas for the fish. And it bridges the two islands nicely. There's just this kind of negative space here, which could work, but I think I need to get a rock in there and see how it fits. And since this area has the most open space, I'm gonna go with the second biggest rock. I think the biggest rock I have, I'm not gonna use. It could work, but I think it's gonna take up just too much space for the quarries. So I'll get this in here. I think that actually works pretty well. That'll look interesting, kind of submerged in the sands. I'll get a couple more rocks in and see how they look. I think that looks interesting. And I'm keeping one kind of to the back here because there's this sawn off piece on the side. Here, I'll show you. There are these sawn off pieces of the wood right here that I'm trying to hide. I don't think that rock quite does it. I might rearrange this slightly. But this is a good thing to keep in mind when you're doing an aquarium, or all of the viewing angles, and there is going to be one angle right here because my desk is kind of right where the camera is right now. So keeping that in mind as you set up the aquarium is just going to make it look a lot nicer in the long run. I've had setups in the past where I think it looks great, and then I sit down on the couch or somewhere where I wasn't thinking about looking at it, but a natural place to look at it, and then it kind of ruins the whole effect. So keep that in mind as you're working on your aquariums. Okay, so this is what I've landed on thus far. I think it balances really well. The kind of smaller island here, larger island here, both of them kind of off center. But I think I'm gonna let it sit like this for a little bit, and I'm going to think about it. It's about time for me to start cooking dinner, so I think I'm gonna do that. And I think I'm gonna come back and check on it in the morning, see how it looks with fresh eyes. So I'll check in with you guys first thing in the morning for me in like 30 seconds for you. All right, guys, so it is now the next morning. It's fairly early. The lights are just starting to come on the tanks and the rest of the studio, and I've got my coffee, and I've just taken a look at the new setup that we've been working on, and I'm pretty happy with it. Full disclosure, I did work on it for maybe an hour and a half off camera last night, just tinkering around, that kind of thing. I even got a little bit of help from my wife, just her practiced artist's eye, helping me out a little bit. But I came up with this, and let me show you. So this is what I ended up with. I did decide to incorporate the big rock, and I think that this really pulled the whole thing together. I'm keeping in the dual island aspect here, and I think the thing that was really holding me back in creating this is I was really hung up on having this piece attached to this smaller one kind of in this back corner. And once I decided to switch that up, it actually came together pretty quickly. And if we look at this from like more of a technical aquascaping aspect, it does follow a lot of the same lines, like these two pieces kind of give this motion like this, and then these branches kind of meet here, almost merging the two islands. They'll be distinct but cohesive because of this sort of central area. And looking at it straight on, it does give a good amount of negative space here that will be pleasing, but it's also going to be kind of balanced by this bigger rock. And in terms of the planting, it is going to be sort of centralized in these two areas, which is going to work out perfectly. And in terms of the rocks, I really did decide that I needed to use this one for structural purposes, but also having just 3 smaller rocks in here just wasn't good for the overall balance. So I said before that having this bigger rock was going to take up a lot of swim area and foraging space for the cories, but I managed to kind of compensate for that by raising both of these pieces up. So you can see at the bottom, there are going to be kind of natural caves underneath both of these pieces of spiderwood. So there's only really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points where the hardscape is touching the bottom. And this is just going to make natural good hiding spaces for the cories, and then a really interesting kind of upper area. And because of the planting in both of these areas, there is going to be quite a bit of shade on the sandy foreground, and that's going to make the cories feel really safe. In my experience, I've found that corydoras, they don't feel as comfortable in an aquarium when there's a lot of light coming from above. So this will create a lot of good shadows and just natural spaces for the catfish to exist. But overall, I'm really pleased with this. I think this is a really interesting, pleasing hardscape, and I'm pretty excited to get plants on here. And that'll be in the next video. The next video will be planting. But I think for now, the next steps for this is going to be to glue all of this wood together and then to add sand. So let's get started doing that. Now, and you might be wondering what I have sitting underneath this rock here. And this is just some filter floss. I just put down a little layer before putting down the rock because it's pretty heavy, and I just wanted to make sure that it's not going to crack the glass or anything like that. So I am going to have to come in here and remove a little bit of the filter floss. I'm just going to get in here with some scissors and just kind of cut around the edges. Might be a little bit difficult, but I'll do that at the same time I start gluing everything. So to glue all of this together, I'm going to use cotton pads and super glue. And you've probably seen people do this on the internet before if you spent any time watching other like aquascaping videos, that kind of thing, but I'll show you how it's done. It's super easy. And when you're buying super glue to do this, it's really nice if you can get the kind or get a pack that comes with these tiny little nozzles, like the precision nozzle. So yeah, if you look at this, it's just this little part here, and that just makes it really easy to get inside tight spaces. And you'll see why that's important in a second. So basically all you do here is just take your cotton pad, you could use tissue paper or anything like that too, and just make a little ball like this. And then you can use your fingers or tweezers. I like to use tweezers to get into tight spaces. And then you're just gonna put this little ball in a place where the hardscape is touching a stone. So I'm just gonna wedge it right under there. And when you're doing this, try to make sure that it's out of sight. You can go back and hide this kind of stuff. Like if I put one right here, for example, I could put like a plant right here to hide that easily. But when possible, it's best to kind of put it behind the wood if you can. So I know you can hardly see it, but this is where the precision nozzle comes in handy. I'm just gonna get right in here and just soak that cotton pad with the super glue. So now I'm just gonna go across the whole hardscape, pick a few points to attach the wood to the stones, like here, probably here, here, just any major contact point. And I'm probably gonna glue these two pieces of wood together as well. So yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna come in here and remove this foam. But just a note, because this has happened to me a couple times, but if you get any super glue on the glass, don't worry about it. It'll dry into a hard plastic, and then you can easily just use a scraper to get rid of it, like an algae scraper or a razor blade, something like that. So don't worry about it if that happens to you. Okay, so gluing is done. One other note about that, I'm not sure if you can see, there is a little bit of smoke. I'm not sure if smoke is the right word, but it's like a chemical fume that gets released when you do this method. So make sure you're working in a fairly well ventilated area. Open some doors, get some airflow going through, something like that. I'm gonna go grab a breath of fresh air in a moment here, just for my own safety. But before I do that, if you've never seen something like this before, you may be wondering, like, okay, why are you gluing it? Well, this wood is totally dry and has never been in water before. So it's gonna be super buoyant whenever I fill this up. So just gluing it like this is gonna make sure that the whole thing stays submerged when I do fill it up with water. And if you want to avoid doing this method of gluing everything down, you could take the time to soak these pieces for like a few days, maybe even a week or more, until they start sinking, or you could boil them. But the reason I'm okay with doing this right now is that when I fill this up, I'm essentially going to be doing that process just in the aquarium. And it's interesting when you do it this way, because you can see like biofilm and slime mold forming on these. And I think that's an interesting thing to share. So we'll get to see that together, basically what you avoid by boiling. But truth be told, I almost never boil my spider wood, and I haven't really had any problems with it, aside from one tank. There was a nano I had that just got kind of consumed by the biofilm and everything that formed on the wood, but that was only for the first 3 weeks or so. Even then, in my worst experience, it wasn't that bad in the long run of things. And that tank is still doing fine. In fact, I'll show you. So this is the tank right here, just a little shrimp tank. And this piece of spider wood that I have in here, yeah, it made a ton of biofilm, and the shrimp weren't even eating it fast enough to keep up with it. But you can see it now. It looks totally fine. It's not a big deal. Didn't have any detrimental effect on the tank after those 3 weeks. So you can boil your spider wood, and it's probably safer, just a precaution, but I haven't found the need to personally. Okay, so back to this tank. Generally with super glue like this, you want to let it dry for probably 24 hours to be safe. I don't always do that, and I haven't had too many problems, but I'd recommend it. So I think what my plan is going to be is to get rid of this foam in here and then do the sand. So I'm just going to use a pair of scissors. I might be able to just put the sand in and not have to worry about it, but I'm just going to try to cut around this bigger edge, because the quarries that I plan to put in here do like to dig in the substrate a bit. So it's going to be best if I can avoid them digging up this piece of foam. If it was just going to be fish swimming in the top and the mid grounds, I probably wouldn't bother with this. I think I'm going to need some better scissors. Okay, so I did get in there and basically rip most of it off. There are still some patches, and a little bit further towards the back, it does poke out a little bit, but the sand is going to be slightly higher in the back, so I think that's going to be okay. Fingers crossed, at least. So for the substrate, I'm going to go with this play sand. We'll see how it looks when it gets in the tank, but it is kind of just like a golden looking sand. So I'm just using a coffee mug to get this in here, but there are obviously much better tools you could be using for this job. So I'm just going to start in the back and kind of work my way forward. And when you're doing this, you don't need to worry too much about getting like sand on the hardscape. It's really not a big deal because the water will kind of even it out as we go, and we can manipulate it, as we add more, and we can get a brush in there. Some different tools to move things around. For now, I'm just getting it all in. So obviously it looks pretty messy and uneven at this point, but I'm just going to start manipulating it with my hands, just trying to get it a little bit under everything. I'm going to break up some bigger clumps, just kind of push it towards the back. And yeah, I'm just starting with my hands. We can use some more precise tools if we need them. I just want to try to get the kind of thickest part of it towards the back. And what I mean by that is sort of sloping it up towards the back of the tank. But if you are able to slope the substrate towards the back, it makes your whole tank feel quite a bit deeper. And it'll feel like there's more kind of depth to it, because it's sort of an optical illusion. It will trick the eye into thinking that it's deeper. Because if you look at it straight on and the whole thing is flat, it kind of looks like it just sort of falls off into nothing. But if it's going upwards, it looks like it's trailing further backwards. So if you can achieve that, it will make your aquarium look more dynamic. All right, let me show you another handy tool. So this is a paintbrush, and you can pretty easily manipulate the sand in tight spaces with it. And you can also use it to brush things off of the hardscape really easily. And I guess this is a good time to mention that a big reason I did the hardscape before adding sand and sort of digging everything in is that I want to make sure that these rocks are touching the glass, because the quarries that I plan to add will probably want to kind of dig around the edges of things where detritus gets trapped, and I don't want them to accidentally dig up one of these rocks, or I shouldn't say dig up, but sort of move it in a way where the rock shifts and maybe it injures one of the quarries. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. I'm gonna use one more tool. This is basically like a sand leveler. You could easily use like a protractor or something for this, and doing this is a little bit superfluous, especially since there's gonna be quarries in here. They're gonna move this sand all over the place. But I'll just show it to you because it is a cool little tool that can be helpful to get like a really nice, clean foreground edge here. Yeah, you can just use it to kind of pull the sand back a little bit and make the whole thing look pretty even. I don't always have the patience to do this because when the water gets in, it's going to even out this whole layer as well. And the truth is, over time, the quarries are really going to have their way with this sand. And the focus isn't necessarily going to be on the sand as much anyway. It's going to be on the plants and on the quarries themselves. So just having it in here for them is the main purpose of it. But those are basically just some kind of principles for hardscape that you can, or for substrate, that you can use to sort of have an easier time doing this kind of setup. So this is looking awesome. I'm really happy with where we're at so far. I think the next step is going to be to fill it up with water, but I want to wait until probably later today to make sure that the glue dries super well before I fill it up. So I think in the next video, you will see this full of water, and it's probably going to be pretty cloudy. I'll fill it up, and then I'm not going to do any water changes on it or anything until I start filming again, because I think I'm going to end the video here. But I want you to see what it's going to look like after filling it up with all of this wood and the sand and everything, because I didn't wash anything here. So later tonight, I'll fill it up, and then when I see you guys next, you'll see this thing. It's probably going to be incredibly cloudy. But in the next episode, we're going to move on to the planting and everything, so that'll be really exciting. Got a bunch of Java fern, Bucephalandra, mini bulbitis, and then I'm also going to take some cuttings of Hydrocotyle Japan from another tank. So make sure that you like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see the next episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can see whenever I come out with that. It'll probably be in a week, something like that. But I'm really excited to share the next steps with you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.